What's going on, Flock Nation? Monday, June 10th. Welcome inside the vault. A Ravens lunch hour live stream awaits. I'm Bobby Trossett. This live stream is brought to you by our friends at Primary Residential Mortgage. If you haven't been around, Sarah Ellison and her family are now, a few days in, maybe four days in to their Iceland trip. And I know that they're having an absolute blast out there. So looking forward to having her back later this week. Ravens team mandatory minicamp takes place from Tuesday through Thursday. Media days today. I'm sure there'll be some content that I'll have to kind of update you on live in real time here throughout this live stream. But it's going to be an exciting week because we're going to really have a chance to take a closer look through the media's eyes, through Ravens Productions' eyes, through all of those different outlets throughout this week as we make our way through mandatory minicamp. And then, of course, training camp will be the next. And remember, there's no pads this week. Pads don't come out till training camp, but there'll still be a number of pressing topics that we can follow closely. So that will be topic 2. 10 items. I know 5, I kind of labeled it as 5 if you're watching on Twitter, but I'll go through 10 different things that I'm looking at ahead of mandatory minicamp. And we'll also take a look at what Brian Baldinger, former NFL offensive lineman turned NFL analyst, had to say recently about the Ravens' projected O-line, which has been much talked about, and it will continue to be talked about because of how important it is to Lamar Jackson's offensive operation. Darren Waller is retiring from the game. We'll take a look back at his career, and which of course began in Baltimore, and it was a tumultuous career, but one that I think you can look at him now really as an inspiration. So we'll take a look at that. A number of quick hits as well. But again, glad you're here. As always, welcome inside the vault, and we will begin with Brian Baldinger on the Glenn Clark radio show, talking just very generally about the Ravens offensive line. Remember, this time last year, there were similar questions. Weren't sure who the starting left guard was going to be, for example. That ended up being John Simpson all year long. There were obviously questions, and there will continue to be questions about Ronnie Stanley, whose future in Baltimore is uncertain after this year. And of course, maybe most compellingly, right? Who is going to be the starting right tackle? Will it be a rookie in Roger Rosengarten? Or could it potentially be a Daniel Falele? Where will Patrick McCary figure into all of this? And who's going to be the starting right guard? Of course, with Kevin Zeitler having left, I should say, in free agency. Could that be Andrew Voorhees? Could that be a number of other candidates? They have depth. The question becomes, what will that depth be? And how will it all play out to form a starting combination of offensive linemen a couple months from now when the 2024 season kicks off? Here's Baldy on that entire concept.
I mean, honestly, Glenn, they replace offensive linemen the way Walmart stocks shelves. I mean, Andrew Voorhees was drafted last year in the 7th round, coming off an ACL. I mean, he's going to step in.
They pay higher rates than Walmart.
Yeah, they do. But Ben Cleveland's there. Rosengart was drafted to replace Morgan Moses. Maybe Falele is there. Maybe Rosengart beats him out. I mean, I don't know. Like Stanley goes down and McCary steps in. Look, their best pick that they've had was Tyler Linderbaum. He's a great player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think when your center is strong, it makes everybody else better. But, just the way that they utilize, various pieces. I think the offensive line, and look, Simpson was really good, and Zeitler was, I don't know if he missed a snap in the years that he was there.
I don't think he gave up a sack either the entire time.
I don't know if he missed a practice. The guy was just he was just unbelievable in what he did. And, he'll probably do the same thing. Regardless, I think they're going to be in pretty good shape. They got a good offensive line coach. They know how to coach that position. They do things in a run game nobody else does. They're still going to be difficult to stop. I think they're going to be pretty good.
That's courtesy of Glenn Clark Radio. Brian Baldinger, former NFL player, NFL analyst. And did you catch what he said at the top? This was the best part.
Well, I mean, honestly, Glenn, they replace offensive linemen the way Walmart stocks shelves.
They replace offensive linemen the way that Walmart stocks shelves. I love that from Baldy. But it is so true. right? Led by Joe D'Alessandris, their offensive line coach, led by their scouting department, headed up by Eric DeCosta, right? They will bring in guys, whether they're undrafted or drafted, and more often than not, develop them and cultivate a culture in that offensive line room. Has it been inconsistent and up and down at times throughout the Lamar Jackson era? Sure. But I think this perception that I'm hearing, I know I took a couple calls about this during Friday's stream last week. There is this perception that the biggest concern or the biggest unknown, which I think is fair, entering the 2024 season is, well, what do they have now at offensive line? And what combination is going to be the reliable one that puts the Ravens where they were last year or gives them a chance to compete for the type of powerhouse that they were last year, just a couple plays away from competing for a Super Bowl? I think that that's a valid concern. It's a valid question. But my point here is, first of all, you're hearing from Baldy saying not so fast. And second of all, they had the very similar questions this time last year. Not only were the questions there about Ronnie, but they were there about left guard, right? Morgan Moses was looked at as somebody who was reliable and consistent and a seasoned vet, but weren't sure how durable he would be, or perhaps maybe how much of a mainstay he would be. Maybe it was more the question about Morgan, since he has been extremely durable throughout his career. You know what you get in Tyler Linderbaum. There's no question about that. But on the left-hand side, between Ronnie and John Simpson coming out of nowhere, those were big questions this time last year. I think we can all kind of sit here and say that maybe, just maybe, this is a starting five that you'd feel comfortable rolling out there week 1, Thursday Night Football at Arrowhead. Ronnie Stanley on the left tackle slot. Andrew Voorhees potentially being the guy after redshirting essentially his rookie year. The Ravens went and got him, of course, a couple of years ago in the draft in the 7th round. We all know this by now, that he's the guy who tore his ACL during the pre-draft process, and he's been in the gym ever since, grinding away. Could he be your starting left guard? We know Tyler Linderbaum is a centerpiece, literally and figuratively. He's not going anywhere. Could Ben Cleveland be the guy at right guard? He's somebody that's filled in admirably at times last year, somebody who they certainly have high hopes for. And then I guess the big question, which we're about to get to more from Baldy on, will Roger Rosengarten be handed the keys to starting right tackle right out of the gate? Or will there be more of a transition? Will they give him a window that allows the rookie to sit behind, say, a Daniel Falele? Right? Right now, if you look at the depth chart, Roger Rosengarten is your starting right tackle. Now, that's an unofficial depth chart. The one we care about will come out later in the summer. But right now, if you go on ESPN.com and you look at the Ravens depth chart, from left to right, this is your starting five. Again, that is an unofficial depth chart. Here's Baldy on the Ravens' 2nd round pick out of Washington. Again, someone who, remember, protected Michael Penix's blindside as a lefty throwing quarterback.
You know, all the attention went to the left tackle.
Right.
And probably rightfully so. I mean, Pittsburgh took him, and he was an elite player, Fontenot. And so they kind of got overshadowed a little bit. That will happen.
Yep.
But, you know, that was the best deep ball passing offense in all of college football. And nobody was close to what Michael Penix did. And you needed offensive linemen that could, you know, pass block for a long time to get these, you know, you watch him against University of Texas, you watch him in big games against Oregon. Like, he stood out. And that offensive line had to hold their blocks a long time. Michael Penix, you know, the guy is a dynamic athlete, but primarily he stayed in the pocket and made his throws from the pocket. And so you got a lot of really good plays, a lot of good games where you got a chance to see Fontenot and Rosengarten and the center all have to stand in there and really pass protect a lot longer than most college programs did. So and he's got good size on him. I thought he was drafted in the right place. I don't know if you're going to plug and play him yet. We'll see how he holds up, through training camp and in all of the preseason games. But I think they're going to give him a good long look to see if he can win that starting right tackle job.
So, spoiler alert, next topic, we'll take a look at a number of different items that are pressing in my mind going into mandatory minicamp this week, which is Tuesday through Thursday, as I mentioned earlier on in the stream. And Roger will no doubt be one of those, right? You hear there from Baldy, somebody who is not only well studied, but is well experienced at the offensive line position. And as an analyst, he speaks for what a lot have said about Roger Rosengarten. This is a dude who has a ton of experience at the college level under his belt. He essentially was the most important piece to the puzzle offensively for Washington outside of their quarterback. He's someone who has had the legend and an all-time great in Joe Staley as his mentor throughout the pre-draft process. He had a total of I think 5 or 6 rings, or maybe it was 5 or 6 different past players on his high school coaching staff. So when I think of Roger Rosengarten, I think of somebody who is unquestionably going to have to go through hurdles, jump through them, right? Face that rookie wall at some point, get in the heated battle of competition in training camp in order to earn that slot. But he really comes across as somebody who is capable of taking over the starting right tackle duties right out of the gate. I think he's got a very even-keeled demeanor about him. Really enjoyed and appreciated his mindset during his media session a week ago. You heard Baldy talk about his size. I think he's a well-studied guy. And somebody's going to come in here and understand that, hey, you got to earn this starting right tackle status as a rookie. And even if they do feel like he earns it, they might still give a vet a chance. That might be the case. But I think we can all feel good about the potential and the longevity when it comes to Roger Rosengarten for the near future, right? For the foreseeable future, I should say, as being somebody that they can count on and that can develop within their system. Now, along those lines, the question becomes, could he develop into a starting caliber left tackle and transition to left tackle? Of course, Ronnie Stanley, as I mentioned earlier on, is not guaranteed to be in Baltimore after the 2024 season. With that comes the question, could that be Roger? Could the future left tackle in Baltimore be Roger Rosengarten?
Oh, I mean, everybody sort of, wants to ask that question about guys that only played right tackle. Can you go to left tackle? They want to know that about Fuaga, coming out of Oregon State. But not everybody can transfer. I remember just last year, Tristan Wirfs, an all-pro right tackle, had to learn and go over to left tackle. And he was telling me how difficult it was. In fact, he said he was, eating food with chopsticks and putting them in his left hand to see if he could get the food to his mouth. He was kind of retraining his brain, and no, he made it successful, but by no means, for a guy that was an all-pro right tackle, was it easy for him to go to left tackle. So not everybody can do it. Some people are a little bit better at it than others, but it's, you cross-train these guys. I would imagine you'll cross-train Roger a little bit and see if he can handle that for sure.
Well, the nice part is they don't have to worry about that for at least another year. And when you have a guy like Patrick McCary in the stable, a jack of all trades, master of none, and I know I use that phrase for him oftentimes. I hope it doesn't come across as if there's any kind of negative connotation to that whatsoever. If anything, I think it speaks to Patrick's invaluable reliability, his consistency, his versatility. There's a reason why they paid him a couple of years ago. And so I'm not sure what Patrick's role outside of maybe a swing tackle could be, which is important, no doubt, for the 2024 season. But at least knowing that Patrick can be called upon anytime, and when his number is called, he answers every single time. We saw it last year. We've seen it in previous years. Who knows? Maybe we'll see it again. But at least it's nice to know that you have somebody in a Roger Rosengarten that's willing and able to develop and learn within this system and potentially be an answer in the next year or so. Should they need an answer at left tackle? We'll see what Ronnie is this year. There seems to be some optimism about his overall health right now, given that he's had a solid offseason. Could he put some of those past durability concerns in the rearview mirror? Maybe they don't have to use and rely on a tackle rotation this year. Somehow they did so effectively last year, which was extremely unconventional, and I still scratch my head at how they were able to do so incredibly effectively. We'll see if that ends up being the case this year. Here's the latest from Jeff Zrebiec talking about Andrew Voorhees, the aforementioned Andrew Voorhees, a 7th-round pick from a couple years ago out of USC. He met with the media last week. I thought he also was a really interesting listen. He referred to one of the organized team activities last week on Thursday as just another day, just trying to put that day behind me, referring to when he tore his ACL, and just kind of close that chapter and move on. I'm just so thankful to be where I'm at now in terms of my health and stuff. Proud of the work that I've put in and that all of our staff has poured in. And yes, I'm just looking forward now to what lies beyond us. Jeff goes on to write, of course, that the Ravens drafted the former USC standout with the expectation that he would likely need a redshirt year to get his knee right. That's exactly what he got a season ago. He also focused on getting the rest of his He also focused on getting the rest of his body stronger. The work he put in, this is what I've highlighted from Jeff's latest, courtesy of The Athletic. The work he put in has him in good position to compete for one of the Ravens starting guard vacancies. So there you have it. Somebody they took a flyer on, somebody who was supposed to be, easily a day 2 pick based on, I guess, depending on who you talk to as far as draft analysts are concerned a couple years ago. And now somebody who's going to get a chance perhaps right out of the gate in what feels like his rookie year, despite coming off his actual one that was a redshirt season. Could he have the opportunity to be the starting left guard in Baltimore? I think the biggest takeaway here from the topic of the offensive line, keeping in mind what Brian Baldinger said about the way that they craft offensive line. What was the quote that he used again? The Walmart quote? Let's hear it.
I mean, honestly, Glenn, they replace offensive linemen the way Walmart stocks shelves. I mean, Andrew Voorhees was drafted.
They replace offensive linemen the way Walmart stocks shelves. That's incredible. See if it ends up being the case yet again this upcoming year for Joe D and the Ravens offensive line group. Before we continue and get to some pressing topics that I'm thinking about and paying attention to, entering it's mandatory minicamp week, which is exciting. A lot going on. No pads involved, but it's mandatory, meaning attendance, you would think, and you would expect to be through the roof. Before we get there, this episode, as you heard at the top, is brought to you by my friends at Primary Residential Mortgage. And if you are in the market to begin your home buying process, consider going with PRMI. You can experience a local feel with a national footprint. They serve 49 states in total, and over 11,000 satisfied clients checked in with them in 2023. So again, you do not need to be in the Maryland area to get involved. And you don't need to be in the Maryland area to potentially get your name involved here for an exclusive incentive that's available to you as a Vault subscriber or a Bobby Baltimore subscriber. PRMI is going to cover the cost of your appraisal up to $550, and all you need to do is this. Submit your application on the PRMI Mid-Atlantic website by July 1st. July 1st. coming up in a few weeks, and you'll be eligible for this incentive when you decide to purchase a home. All this information, and in order to get started, is available in the show notes below. So don't wait. Apply today and make your home ownership dreams a reality. PRMI is an equal housing lender, NMLS 3094. And a special thanks to Primary Residential Mortgage for sponsoring the show. Okay, here we go. Let me know in the live chat, by the way, what you think the most pressing items are for your liking entering the team's mini camp this week. What I've done is I've grabbed 10 of them. Top 5 are the most pressing, and then the bottom 5 of the top 10 are more just like notable nuggets that I'm going to be looking at and paying attention to from afar when a mandatory mini camp kicks off. So let's begin with what's pretty friggin' obvious. Year 2 of the Todd Monken and Lamar Jackson experience. How could I not lead off with this one? They got off to a relatively slow start, all things considered, right out of the gate last year. Didn't keep them from winning games, but you could just tell that there was a little bit of, as Todd refers to it as, drag. There was a little bit of drag in the offense. Lamar was still probably learning the system, as were his teammates around him. Now you'll have an entire offseason not only to get stronger and, in Lamar's case, leaner and lighter, which you would think translates to being quicker and faster. But now you bring in the likes of Derrick Henry. You draft a speedy wide receiver in Devontae Walker. You re-sign and extend Rashad Bateman, betting on his continued development, right? And so there's a number of new pieces around you. But maybe more importantly, now you let Todd get even more comfortable in the system with Lamar. And we all know that he has the keys to this system. But I think more so than that, Lamar has shown this willingness and this ability to not necessarily be forced to wear the Superman cape. And the way that he spread the burden out, yeah, we want him to play more Lamar ball. Obviously, I think RG3 gave a great answer to me and Sarah on the night of the draft, just about what he saw in the AFC Championship game, and really this desire. We all want to see Lamar ball, but we also want to see him protect himself. We want to see him have as much of a I was going to say shelf life. That's not the right word, but as much durability as possible throughout the course of a grueling 17 game, 18 week, multi-month season, because it is war out there, especially in the trenches. And so, to me, number one, how much will we learn over the course of the next few days about this duo, or how much will we see? It might be few and far between, right? Again, no pads, a lot of walkthroughs, a lot of installs. That's how it goes this time of year. But there's no more important duo and the way that they coexist together within the confines of this offense than the two guys that you're seeing on the screen for my YouTube audience. And for the audio only, you know who it is. Second-year offensive coordinator in Baltimore, Todd Monken, and now entering his 7th NFL season, which is hard to believe, Lamar Jackson. That's number one for me, the number one thing that I'm looking at going into mandatory minicamp. Number two, and you may not recognize this man on the screen, but boy, oh boy, I hope you do, and I hope you will moving forward, because I'm not sure there was anybody more important than outside linebackers coach Chuck Smith to last year's pass rush infusion. It was a frenzy. They led the league in sacks. There were pressures all over the place. You had multiple dudes that were hovering around that 10-sack category. You had vets like Kyle Van Noy and Jadeveon Clowney who put forth career years. You had young guys take steps forward like Odafe Owe. You had Justin Madubuike, who I know isn't an outside linebacker per se, but Justin Madubuike had an all-pro caliber season, got paid to be that kind of guy this offseason, and now he's in town in Baltimore for the foreseeable future now that Eric DeCosta and company got out in front of it, right? You have more guys that Chuck's going to be able to develop this year, like Adisa Isaac, who they drafted out of Penn State. We'll see what comes of David Ajabo getting ready for year 3, and a number of other pieces that are going to be at his disposal. When I see Chuck Smith, I see somebody who's a guy that's universally respected, not only throughout the NFL, but in particular, the pass rush circles. They call him Dr. Rush for a reason. He preaches technique, he preaches discipline, variety, versatility, and by John Harbaugh bringing him in over a year ago, I think it signaled there, not a change in guard, but it signaled, hey, you know what? We're going to do things a little bit different. We're going to do an unconventional hiring process here. We're going to bring in somebody not with any like traditional NFL coaching experience, but rather with specialist experience, with like individual coaching experience. And we're going to bring him in and see if he's a leader of men and see if he can uplift and improve our pass rush department. Well, he passed with flying colors through 1 year. Can we all agree? They got contributions all over the place when it comes to getting to the quarterback. And while there are similar questions now, much like there are with the offensive line, to what there were last year, to think about what they did given those questions this time last year, given that Kyle Van Noy wasn't even on the team until the opening month, given the fact that Jadeveon Clowney barely even participated and wasn't around for a training camp, I think there's reason for encouragement when projecting where the pass rush will come from, when it will come from, and who specifically will it come from because of this guy and because of some of the opportunities for development that they have within this locker room. I look at a guy like Odafe Owe, and I see someone who, yes, had his 5th-year option picked up, and I think there's a reason for that. One, you've seen gradual development. You've seen the motor. You've seen an increase in technique, especially with the arrival of Chuck Smith. I know he has not finished enough to our liking when it comes to getting to the quarterback, but this is a dude who was a late bloomer in the game of football, somebody who is a freak of nature from an athleticism standpoint. And man, I think I'd be willing to bet on his development given what's around him and given some of the flashes that we've seen, some of the glimpses of what we've seen from Odafe Owe. So number 2 on my list going into the team's mandatory minicamp, not only Chuck Smith, but just the overall pass rush department as a whole. Where will it go? And most importantly, how will it replace all the production that walked out the door this offseason? Of course, with Jadeveon Clowney leading the way, getting a big payday in Carolina. Not sure if you're chasing rings at this point in your career, but he certainly chased the bag, and he got a big bag. And I know there was a lot more to it than that. I don't want to make it seem like it was just about the money. I know this was a return to near his hometown as well, down in the Carolinas. But the Ravens are going to have to figure out, how will we replace the sheer amount of productivity that walked out the door when Jadeveon signed with the Carolina Panthers. Number 3. Man needs no introduction, but boy, does he look good in purple. That's King Henry. How can you not be wanting to watch Derrick Henry, regardless of whether or not there's pads involved? Derrick is getting ready for his first season in Baltimore. He's getting ready for his first mandatory team minicamp. Here he is on the left-hand side of your screen doing some shrugs with kettlebells. The dude does not look human. His workouts can feed families. Number 22, last worn by, not sure if it was last worn by. I think Pepe actually last year wore 22, if I'm not mistaken. But when I think of 22, of course, I think of the great Jimmy Smith. That'll be worn by King Henry this year. And how can you not be anticipating what Derek will look like and what he will be asked to do in this system? Gosh, what he won't be asked to do, or the effect that he'll have on the game when he's not being asked to do anything specifically with the football. Think about Derrick Henry as a decoy. Think about Derrick Henry's presence alone in terms of the stress and preparation that's going to require from opposing team defensive coordinators every single game that he is available and healthy for. And let's hope for his sake that's all 17. Here he is recently working out. And again, we all know that his workouts are absurd. The movement, the positioning, the intensity. I mean, look at this. Just some leg lunges, ridiculous shoulder workouts, medicine ball work for balance and strength and core. I'm telling you, this guy is built superhuman, and he works out like it. That frame doesn't come just naturally. Well, maybe some of it does, but not without big time and unwavering commitment to excellence from a physical standpoint. Couldn't you just watch him work out all day long? I mean, you could literally focus on a different muscle group every time you look at him. Triceps, biceps, lats, thighs, core. He's got like a 10-pack. So there you have it. Number 3 is an easy one. Derrick Henry getting ready for his first mandatory minicamp in Baltimore, which brings me to number 4. Again, probably not much of a surprise whatsoever. But ahead of his 4th NFL season, can Rashad Bateman be an integral piece to Lamar Jackson's offensive puzzle? And can these two find middle ground on the field? We know they have an immense amount of mutual respect for one another. We know that Rashad was extended this offseason, as I mentioned earlier on in the stream. We know he is finally healthy. At least we think that he is fully healthy. And he's really had his first clean offseason, both on and off the field. Whether it be his rehab, whether it be his personal life, it really seems as if Rashad is in a great place between the ears. And perhaps that's the first step to becoming somebody who can be a needle-moving contributor. I'm not saying a needle-moving from the perspective that he's going to be, a 10-touchdown, 1,000-yard receiver this year. But how about somebody that can really be a solid number 2 behind Zay Flowers? Somebody that can show Devontae Walker the way. Somebody who can kind of maybe replace the production that walked out the door when Odell Beckham Jr. left in free agency. Can Rashad Bateman be that guy? Can he and Lamar find cohesion? Find that middle ground that we have not seen consistently enough throughout 4 seasons, a lot of which has been due to the unavailability of Rashad for reasons that are well documented in the health department. This is number 4 for me. Rashad Bateman and Lamar Jackson. What does that look like in year 4? And can they find some chemistry, some consistent chemistry? Number 5, and I teased this earlier on, can Roger Rosengarten, right out of the gate, whether it be through mandatory minicamp, training camp, or both, start to emerge as the guy to be your starting right tackle this year? Just how intense of a battle will it be for right tackle? Who will be the big names involved in that competition? You'd have to think that Rosengarten and Falele will be right at the top of that list. But can Roger kind of live up to these lofty expectations that a lot of us on the outside are placing on him? I think for a very good reason. He's got a ton of experience. used some significant draft capital on him. Ravens scouting department has absolutely raved about what Roger stands for, both on and off the field. And Sarah and I have had the privilege of catching up with some folks that are really close to him, including a former Denver Broncos offensive lineman who won a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning, Tyler Columbus, who joined us last month to talk a little bit about his relationship with Roger and what he's projected to be at the NFL level. That's my top 5. Top 5 things to watch. Again, not sure if any of these questions are going to be answered by the week's end. But 1, the Todd Monken and Lamar Jackson experience entering year 2. 2, where's the pass rush production coming from? And that room led by guru Chuck Smith. Number 3, of course, Derrick Henry. 4, the Rashad Bateman and Lamar Jackson combination. And 5, starting right tackle. And that's not the only competition that will be going on, obviously, at the offensive lineman, in the offensive lineman world. There will be battles at guard, left tackle, and center. There's not going to really be any kind of competition, barring something unforeseen. But as far as starting left guard's concerned, starting right guard, and starting right tackle, you're looking at 3 fun areas that we'll be able to watch and highlight. They may have their favorites, right? I think it's probably safe to say that Ben Cleveland would be a favorite at this point because of the experience. And perhaps Andrew Voorhees could be viewed as a favorite as well. I think Roger Rosengart, the difference here is he is a fan favorite and perhaps a favorite as well to be the starting right tackle, but he's not the most experienced one in that group. So we'll have to see. But right then and there, already you're looking at 3 compelling battles going into not only mandatory, but training camp in about a month and a half from right now. Now, like I said, those are my 5 that I'm kind of looking at very closely. But what about like the notable ones that didn't crack my top 5, but are still like important moving forward? Number 6, Keaton Mitchell's ongoing rehab back from last year's knee injury. It happened late in the year. The timeline is certainly don't hold your breath, paraphrasing what John Harbaugh has told reporters in recent weeks. Don't expect to see him at mandatory minicamp, at least not participating. Doesn't mean he's not getting his work done inside. But what will Keaton Mitchell's timeline be? He is your home run hitter. He gives you a little added flavor, a burst, an acceleration, and an explosiveness to a degree that is just very, very hard to replicate. And I think the quicker that Keaton gets back, while you don't want to rush him, trust me, don't get me wrong here. You do not want to rush him back whatsoever. He's too important to your team. And while all that's the case, you also want to be careful with Derrick Henry's usage. He is now 30 years old. I keep forgetting when is his birthday? I think he's 30, and I think maybe he turns 31 during the season, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, okay. He'll turn 31 during the playoffs, you would hope, in early January. And I think with that in mind and knowing how many NFL miles he has logged, you just want to be mindful of Derrick Henry's usage, because you don't want a worn down, banged up Derrick Henry in January. You want somebody that has been along for the ride here and that you've used, no doubt, as your bell cow here and there, but not somebody that you've completely run into the ground. And the quicker that Keaton Mitchell gets back, obviously I know there's other guys in the stable. Rasheen Ali, they just drafted out of Marshall. Justice Hill, the ever reliable Justice Hill, who does a little bit of everything out there for you. But I made that point last week, and that's certainly something that I'll stand by. You want to be careful with Derrick Henry's usage because of how important he's going to be when it all matters and when you want to play Ravens football in January, because they didn't do that enough in late January last year, and I don't need to remind you of what that looked like. So that's my 6th thing that I'm looking at. 7, Marlon Humphrey. Not expected, or at least John Harbaugh wouldn't confirm, that he's expected to be a full go for the team's mandatory minicamp. They have been careful with him throughout the offseason to date at various OTAs. And I threw this tweet in here from Marlon about 20 minutes or so before I went on. Marlon tweeted out something that was a little cryptic. Not sure if it's related to his health or not. But he said that the good thing about getting bad news is positive news isn't far away. Not sure what to make of that. But that's from number 44 within the last hour or so on X. And while he may not be a full go, I just think that, and he'd be the first to tell you this, it was a year unlike what Marlon expects from himself last season. Some of that was due to being banged up, and he's dealing with some of those similar setbacks so far this offseason. I know they retooled at the position, and I know certainly they brought in some guys that could potentially, honestly, after Marlon's time in Baltimore, or at least this current contract that he's on, is coming down to, the tail end. We could be looking at his eventual replacements in Wiggins and or Tampa when all is said and done. But in the here and now, Marlon, I know maybe not in NFL years because he was drafted in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, but Marlon is only 27 years old. And he's not that far removed from a Pro Bowl season in 2022. And he was first team All-Pro with what feels like a while ago, but that was 2019. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, 19, 20, and 2022. Forced fumbles leader back in 2020. I know the peanut punch has not been something we've seen in recent seasons from him. But he'll turn 28 next month. So we'll start his NFL season 28. And this is year number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is year number 8 for Marlon Humphrey. It's an important piece of the defensive puzzle because they're relatively inexperienced at cornerback. And we know how quickly that position can become depleted throughout the course of an NFL season. This is something I'm watching. That's my number 7. Number 8, the primary backup to the 2-time MVP at quarterback. Who will be QB2? Right now, if you look at that unofficial depth chart on ESPN.com, it does show that journeyman Josh Johnson, who has been a part of, a comfortable double-digit amount of teams throughout his NFL career to date, Josh Johnson is listed as the primary backup to Lamar. Josh is also somebody who, again, because he is a journeyman and he has been around for a minute, Josh is 38. He turned 38 last month. How many of you right now in this live chat feel comfortable trotting out Josh Johnson as QB2 all season long? Now, there will be a competition, I'm sure, but John Harbaugh has made it clear in his media sessions that Josh Johnson is their backup. So while there might be a training camp competition between the rookie and Devin Leary, I'm not so sure that in the coaching staff's eyes that it's not Josh Johnson's job to lose. They have been in the backup quarterback market reportedly in recent seasons. We know Tyler Huntley, their former undrafted rookie, is no longer a part of the organization. He left in free agency, and he is now on the Cleveland Browns roster, fighting for a backup position there, which it's probably going to end up being a practice squad designation, I would think, for Tyler Huntley, because they have Jameis Winston, don't they? Pretty sure Jameis Winston is backing up Deshaun Watson in Cleveland this year. He was one of their free agency pickups. Yeah, Jameis Winston. So right now, the Cleveland quarterback room is Deshaun, Jameis, Tyler Huntley, and DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who the Ravens absolutely gave nightmares last year. in what I believe was his first or second or right around there, one of his first career NFL starts. You all remember that? That was brutal. I felt bad for that guy. He got absolutely rocked that game against the Ravens. So, again, I know I just presented this as a question, QB2 just in general. But this is something that I'm going to be watching not only throughout minicamp, but into training camp as well. Is Josh Johnson really the guy at QB2? And is this something that the Ravens are comfortable with? That's number 8 for me. 9 and 10 coming up. Quick swig of water. Tell you what, not easy without your partner. I'm pumped that Sarah's having her vacation, but it is different doing a solo show. I love it. I love it, though. And I'm glad that she and the crew are having a blast out in Iceland. Sarah will be back at the tail end of this week. So looking forward to getting her back in the fold coming up. Number 8. That was 8, Josh Johnson. Number 9. Do Pepe Williams and Jalen Armour-Davis have a future in Baltimore? Seriously. Are they going to be on the 53-man roster this year? The Ravens drafted 2 cornerbacks this year. We know that is Nate Wiggins and TJ Tampa. JAD and Pepe have been banged up over their first couple years in the league. They have been inconsistent. And it's been underwhelming. I think you go around to most fans in this fan base, whether casual or not, and I think might be like, whoa, who are they again? That's no disrespect to either one of these guys. That's just the reality of the situation. A couple former cornerbacks, they were both selected in the same year. Let me do a quick little on-the-fly Google search. I want to say it was 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. JAD was a 4th rounder out of Alabama in 2022. And Pepe, I want to say he was right around that. Let's see. Where was Demarion Pepe? I love his name. And I like Pepe too. They were both 4th rounders. That's right. That was the year they had all those 4th round picks, remember? In 2022. And he played his college football at a couple different places, but finished at Houston, did Pepe. So both guys really have not found consistent roles in Baltimore outside of special teams. And I think the question becomes, do they have futures in the immediate future in Baltimore, given the amount of depth? And I know, again, I know depth can change quickly at this cornerback position. They did re-sign Arthur Maulet, one of the unsung heroes from last year. So look at it this way. Marlon Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, Brandon Stevens, Arthur Maulet all come to mind before JAD and Pepe. And that's not even including TJ Tampa, who I know the Ravens are super excited to get to work with. And there's a couple undrafted rookies that are in there as well that are going to be fighting their butts off to find ways onto the 53-man roster this summer. But the question is simple. Do Pepe and JAD have immediate futures in Baltimore? I don't know the answer to that. And I think it's something that I'll be watching this summer. And lastly, number 10, especially because of the new kickoff rule and everything that's going to come with the XFL innovative new kickoff format that, again, is coming to the National Football League this September. What will life look like after Devin Duvernay, who was only a couple years removed from being an all-pro return specialist? Deontay Hardy expected to be that guy. Life after Devin Duvernay. And Deontay has been around. He is a seasoned vet. He's somebody who the Ravens know well. He is a local boy. Just 26 years of age. He'll be 27 in December. Began his career with the New Orleans Saints. Spent last year with the Bills. Had an unbelievable touchdown return, by the way. Insane. He's an undrafted guy. Played his high school football at Archbishop Curley, for those of you who are local to the Baltimore area. He was a first-team All-Pro back in 2019, by the way. And that year, he was the punt return yards leader. So who will be the guy after Devin Duvernay? And how will Tylan Wallace factor in? Will he continue to return punts? Be curious about that. So these are the types of things that start to take shape at mandatory minicamp, right? These are the types of observations that I'm going to be looking forward to based on what beat reporters watch unfold in the summer. Did Tylan Wallace do enough last year, especially with that walk-off win? Man, was that something? Did he do enough to find his way onto this team? Because we know the wide receiver room is going to be stacked. By the way, I'm hoping to have Kadri on this week so we can learn a little bit about what Kadir has been doing so far since he made the 90-man. Remember, Kadir Ismail, son of Kadri, former Super Bowl winning Raven, is in the mix at wide receiver. Certainly a long shot, but he is in the mix. 6'6", played his college football at Villanova and Samford. He's going to have a chance to compete. I'll be curious to see what he's all about during the team's minicamp. So those are my 10. Again, the 5 being the most pressing, but those are my top 10. Let me know what you think in the live chat below. This took place over the weekend. Former Giant, former Vegas Raider, former Raven. Tight end Darren Waller has informed the New York Giants that he plans to retire. He's walking away early at the age of 31 after just one season with Big Blue. As Ian Rappaport noted, he has not attended workouts. The team had known for some time that he may not play. He was mulling the decision. And now he's officially let them know before the team's minicamp gets underway this week. Darren is, man, what a story. A complicated story, but certainly a story of perseverance. And I think a story that's come with a ton of inspiration, especially to the community of, recovering addicts, really. When he was in Baltimore, Darren was an addict. He was a drug addict and had he had an addiction. He had a drug addiction. And to his credit, he has been sober for years since then. He turned his NFL career around. We know that he is as gifted as any in terms of just the athleticism, the traits, the gifts that God gave him. He is as talented as anybody who's ever stepped on the field, just in terms of the intangibles. Unfortunately, things just didn't work out for him to have like a very, very long career. Had a longer than most. I mean, the average NFL career is not even 2 seasons? I don't think. Anyway, here he is on his show recently talking a little bit about his decision and getting vulnerable as well.
Just lost my life. And I don't know if I really feel like if I would have died that I would have felt great about how my life was going if I died at the time. I'm doing something that I found a lot of joy in and have had amazing moments with. But the passion has slowly been fading. I've, made the decision that I'll be retiring from the NFL. There's eternally grateful for the game of football. I wouldn't be able to have this conversation or to think things through or be self-reflective if it wasn't for an opportunity to save my life and go to rehab, which the NFL offered me. They also gave me an opportunity to, reestablish myself, to, come back into the world and do something productive, provide an example, be a leader, be a difference maker, in my craft, but also just in the day-to-day wherever I go. I mean, all the teams I played for, Baltimore taking a chance on me with all the red flags that I even had coming out of college with, and can't say enough about the Raiders, Oakland, and Las Vegas. Thank you to the Giants. Grateful for all the guys there, all the coaches there. I love y'all, appreciate you, and that's all I got.
So there you go. Darren Waller, a former 6th-round pick out of Georgia Tech by the Ravens back in 2015, calling it a career. He'll be 32 in December. Somebody who, man, again, just so incredibly gifted. But you think about what he's been through. He is a story of resilience. He's a story of perseverance. And I'm just genuinely happy for the guy. I know he has been in the news for a lot of other reasons recently outside of football. Most notably, his, I think, soon to be ex wife. Not sure if the divorce has been finalized, but WNBA star Kelsey Plum has, I don't know if she's spoken publicly about it, but she's definitely posted about it. And Darren, in her words, did something that apparently was unforgivable because that marriage is no longer a thing. And she has been extremely upfront about that on social media, which then led to, within the last couple of weeks, something that has been replayed over and over again, I'm sure, throughout sports circles. Darren Waller released essentially a diss track, a mixtape in response to Kelsey's post, I guess. And it's really just gotten to be, first of all, it's not very well done whatsoever. And by not well done, it was kind of embarrassing. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and judge a guy who is clearly coping with something. Maybe he's working through something, and that was his way of illustrating his feelings. Right? Like I'm not going to be one to sit here and knowing his past and knowing what he's been through. I'm certainly not going to sit up here on a high horse and give those kind of judgments. But what I will say is that I'm happy for Darren that he's on the other side. Hopefully he continues to be on the other side. He's made a boatload of money, and hopefully he goes and enjoys the rest of his life. I know a lot of folks, obviously, within the New York Giants community, are probably really disappointed by this, right? Just the fact that they only had 1 year with him, but ultimately, this is what I'll remember as told by RG3 on his show within the last year or so. This was pretty cool, just sticking to the Baltimore end of things.
On the practice squad in Baltimore, and I was on the active roster. So we're playing against the Raiders, and we're out there pregame, and Waller's he's a freak of nature. So Waller catches one, and I don't really throw it that high, so he doesn't have to jump or anything. He looks back at me, and he's like, nah, throw it higher. And I'm like, all right, cool, I'll throw it higher. Throw it a little higher. I throw it like right around the goalpost. He like jumps up, snags it, no problem. He looks back at me again. He's like, no, throw it higher. I'm like, all right, okay. You want me to throw it higher? I'm going to throw it higher. So I throw it, and I promise you not, like in my mind, it was like halfway up the goalpost. And he jumped up, and it was like the Jordan logo with his legs spread wide, caught that bad boy, got both feet in, and kind of like rolled right past Reggie McKenzie, who was the GM for the Raiders. The next day, Waller was signed to the Raiders active roster.
That's a pretty dope story. Love that story from RG3. And the rest is history there. So congrats on certainly an up and down career, but one that I think, I'm sure Darren Waller will always cherish it. And man, I just keep thinking about all the tight ends that have come through Baltimore, right? That they've developed or that they've let walk. Hayden Hurst comes to mind as well, just because they have so much talent, what feels like all the time at that position. Some quick hits before we jump. And this comes from Inside the Black and Gold, covering the Maryland Terrapins. And Calvert Hall tight end JT Taggart is joining the Terps. Assistant Kevin Sumlin led the way as Taggart committed to Maryland over West Virginia and Colorado. And you may recognize that name, not only because maybe you follow Calvert Hill football here locally in Baltimore, but that he is the son of running backs coach here in Baltimore, Willie Taggart. And of course, Willie was the former head coach at Florida State for a couple seasons. Has just spent the lone 2017 season as the head coach of the Oregon Ducks. He was also with Florida Atlantic. He's had a bunch of different head coaching jobs at the college ranks, but he is now entering into his second season as the running backs coach here in Baltimore. And now his son will be joining the Terps. So be on the lookout for his development. Here's some good news. I know we talked about this at the end of last week, but remember the defensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs, B.J. Thompson, who suffered a cardiac arrest and went into a seizure during a special teams meeting last week. Super scary stuff. He was unconscious for a while, it felt like, after, but awesome news that over the weekend he was brought out of sedation. He's alert. He's awake, recovering well. And I saw a couple reports that he is going home. He's coming home from the hospital, being discharged today. So great news there for, again, Kansas City Chiefs defensive lineman B.J. Thompson, who certainly there was not as much optimism late last week as there is now for him. So he is going to be heading back. And yes, I see some of you in the live chat. Harrison Butker, the polarizing, much talked about, much dissected Harrison Butker was on the scene as soon as, because it was a special teams meeting, and Harrison was a part of that recovery process, just alerting medical professionals. So good on you. Good on you, Harrison. It is media today in Baltimore, so media day today in Baltimore. So again, the team's mandatory minicamp kicks off tomorrow. So it's Tuesday through Thursday, the 11th through the 13th. We will be, I should say, I think Sarah is going to be back with me on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. So we will try and get in as many voices as possible who are actually out there. Kadri said he would, so I'll check in with him this week, just so we can give you kind of like an up-to-date perspective on folks who have a bird's eye view of practice out at Owings Mills. So that is that. I want to make sure we shout out and thank a couple of our returning patrons who are supporting us through Patreon this month. And these are actually a couple of our newest patrons who just signed up to support us. This is a great way to help us out on the back end. It's a great way to say thank you to the show. Kai from Germany and Jerry Sutton, thank you both for believing in what we're building here in Baltimore and beyond. We appreciate your support. This is your monthly shout out. It's a $4.99 tier if you guys are interested in doing the same. So thank you both. Patreon.com/RavensVault podcast to learn more. You can join the Patreon community by checking out the link that I have included in the show notes below. You can also hit me up on social media if you don't already do so at Bobby Baltimore. That is on Twitter and Instagram. Maybe one day I'll get Facebook back. It's been down for copyright purposes, apparently, for what feels like months and months and months. So still trying to figure all that out. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the Vault for daily Ravens content if you haven't already done so. And check us out in the audio-only space as well. I always repurpose this content into the audio space. Within the next hour, you can find it on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Music, wherever you get your shows. Appreciate you guys for dropping by. Again, I'll be with you 23 hours from right now, and we'll get started with a Tuesday Ravens lunch hour live stream. It'll be the first day of mandatory minicamp, and looking forward to another week as we get ourselves ready for, of course, everything that's coming this summer, including training camp coming up in late July. Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for the love. Talk to you tomorrow.